back. Maybe it's the other side is looking horrible or something, I'm not sure. But, and then pull out these little positioners. I guess you don't actually have to pull them out. So there you go. There's your pads are out. Go ahead, kill it. Okay, just a little note on brake pads and inspecting them once you have it off. You'll notice that there's this little piece of metal here, and what happens is that once your brakes wear down far enough to where they are flush with this metal, then you'll start hearing the metal rub against your rotor, and that is to absolutely let you know it's time to change your brakes. This one still has a little bit more to go, but we're going to go ahead and change it anyway. So the next step in changing these is to transfer any of these pieces off the old brake, specifically this, and the rest that's trash, and then you want to throw it on your new brake just like that. There you go. This is called a shim, and there you go. Now we'll go ahead and put it in. I'm gonna kill it for a second. Okay, so now to put them back in, if any of these little positioners came out or you pulled them out, put them back in. There's no real reason to pull them out. I would throw the front brake pad in first because you're going to be fighting this little piece, just a hair, to get it in the back. So once again, make sure your shims are on. Sometimes they will be stuck to the caliper, so you know, if you don't see it, you know, make sure it's not stuck to there, and get it on there. And then go ahead and slide it on in, just how you took it out. And there you go. There's the back, or the front, and the back is a little easier if you can get back there and have a look. So I'm gonna, but you don't necessarily need to, but I am still. And the easiest way is to, and one thing to know is this part goes to the back, and it's easiest if you hook the bottom part in first and then slide the top in. So slide the back into the positioner, and then get the top to go in for me. Can't really see much. Come on now. There we go. And once again, just make sure your shims stay in place. And when you look in here, you should be able to see, you know, the pads should touch the rotor nice and flush, and if they do, then you're good. So I'll just enable this. These shims have little tabs that you can kind of play with to get them to stay into place. And also the caliper will hold it too once you get the caliper in there. So kill it. Okay, and also per the manual, it says that this little pin here that slides back and forth, you know, you should go ahead and grease that up. And this moves back and forth as the caliper piston goes in and out. It moves this assembly just a hair, and that way, you know, when the assembly moves, it pulls on this side, and this side pushes to close it off, and it slides on these two pins here to you know, to accomplish that. And you know, with anything where there's friction, you're going to want some sort of grease or something to help reduce this friction. And so these little pins, if you actually pull it, and be careful not to rip the little dust boot guard thing here, and there you go. And then you can see this pin here, it's well greased, so I'm not going to re-grease it. But if you know, you might as well, if you have some grease around, throw some high temperature grease on there, and that'll just, you know, prolong the life and probably reduce any type of squeaking that might occur. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that back in there. And when you pop it in there, make sure you seat it really good, so you don't want any dust and road ground getting in there. Okay, so now it's time to put the caliper back on, and can you swing around just a hair? Can you see that okay? Mm-hmm. All right, and you'll notice this caliper, this right here is the actual piston that goes in and out to actuate your brakes. And right now, with the position the piston's in, it makes it a little hard to get on over the new brake pads because they're a little fatter than than the old ones. So I'm going to need to compress this piston down. So you have a couple ways you can do that. You can do it with C-clamp, or some vice grips. I'm gonna go ahead and use some C-clamps. Okay, now you can see here I have my C-clamp in place. It's hooked around the back of the caliper. Make sure you don't hit the brake line. And then I use a little wooden block to put across the little piston in there because I don't want to damage it or anything, and I want to compress it evenly. So now I'm going to go ahead and compress it. Okay, now you'll see that part right there is what we're going to want to compress. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can screw it with one hand and let you see it actually compressing. And then, well, as you can, I don't know if you can tell or not, but it has compressed. And the thing about it is that once you have it compressed, it stays compressed. So now I got it totally compressed. Now I can release, and you see that it stayed in that position. So now we're ready to go ahead and slide it on. Okay, so now let's give everything one last check. Make sure all your ends are seated really well into the positioners, and make sure your pads are flush against the rotor. So go ahead and squeeze them there and make sure all your shims, the front and the back shim, are in place nicely. So now, while holding those against the pad, well, let me go ahead and take the caliper loose. Be careful not to let the weight fall and then jerk on the brake line. Okay, now that's gone. I'll start with the back, bring it over to the front. Make sure she seats real well. Make sure your shims didn't move. Okay, that looks about good. Now we'll go ahead and start threading the bolts that hold the caliper on. Are you gonna kill it for a minute? Okay, got that started. You'll have to jack around with the caliper a little bit to get the bolt to line up. And then start the bottom one. There we go. Now, here's something important to note, is that these little slider pins, that the ones I pulled out earlier to show you how to grease, they don't have a round head. They have a rectangular head, and that rectangular head, you have to spin it so it pops in the slot and seats completely. I don't know if you can see that, but it's seating completely now. But if I push back and I have it spun the other way, then it won't seat completely, and there'll be a gap there, and you don't want that. So spin it. Make sure that the rubber boot in that little slider can push completely against the caliper, or against this back assembly part. So go ahead and tighten those down hand tight. Maybe give it a couple of cranks with your socket. Not too tight though, because we're going to torque it. So let me go ahead and get my torque wrench out and get these and consult my manual and find the exact amount of torque I should put on these bolts. Okay, after checking out the manual, the caliper mounting bolts should be between 16 to 24 foot-pounds. So I have my torque wrench set to that. Let's go ahead and torque it. There you go. You hear that click? That means you're in. Let's get the top one. Get this giant torque wrench on here. There we